Thanks very much for joining me. I recognize that this is a pretty crazy time. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. The bad news, Trump launched an unconstitutional attack against Iran. Clearly, he hasn't read the Constitution of the United States. Only Congress has the right to take our country into a war. The extremist Netanyahu government in Israel continues to starve the children there and shoot down innocent people, a real horror. In America, people are walking the streets of our country and they're being picked up by masked federal agents, thrown into vans without any due process, being taken to detention centers. Supreme Court just today made some very bad decisions. That's the bad news, and it's pretty bad. But here's some good news. The good news is that Zohran Mamdani has won the Democratic primary for mayor of New York City. And he has laid out an agenda that reflects the needs of a struggling working class. He has taken on all of the big money interest in New York, the landlords, the billionaires, Wall Street, all of these guys. They spent a lot of money trying to defeat him, but he won. And what's interesting, and something that we'll have to observe, is will the Democratic leadership learn the lesson from his campaign? And that is that if you are prepared to stand up and fight for working families and take on the greed of corporate interest, you can create grassroots excitement. You can get thousands of people out on the street knocking on doors, and you can win elections. Will the Democratic leadership learn that lesson? Well, we will see. But in the midst of all of that and more, a lot of stuff going on every single day, I wanted to take this opportunity to briefly discuss with you a bill that will likely be on the U.S. Senate floor within a couple of days. And that legislation is one of the worst and most dangerous pieces of legislation ever brought forth in modern history. It is terrible. The so-called reconciliation bill, Trump's big, beautiful bill that he and the Republican leadership are attempting to rush through the Senate right now, is a rather extraordinary piece of legislation. In many respects, given the crises facing our country, this bill does exactly the opposite of what should be done. Whether you are a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, you know that our current healthcare system is broken, it is dysfunctional, it is cruel, and it is wildly expensive and getting more and more expensive every day. Despite spending almost twice as much per capita on healthcare as the people of any other nation, some 85 million Americans today are uninsured or underinsured. And pathetically, we remain the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. So, given that reality of a broken, dysfunctional healthcare system, how does this reconciliation bill address that crisis? Does it expand healthcare to cover more Americans and lower the number of uninsured? Does it take on the greed of the insurance companies and the drug companies who make tens and tens of billions of dollars every year by ripping off the people of our country? Is that what this reconciliation bill does? Not quite. In fact, it does exactly the opposite. This bill, if enacted, would make the largest cuts to health care in our nation's history. It would make a terrible situation in health care even worse. And it does all of that, make massive cuts in order to pay for the largest tax break for billionaires in our nation's history. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that this legislation would cut Medicaid in the Affordable Care Act by over $1 trillion. These cuts, along with ending the enhanced premium credits in the Affordable Care Act, will lead to 16 million people losing their health insurance. 16 million people. That's not just me talking. That is what the director of the Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan organization, has told us. This bill, further, for the first time, forces millions of Medicaid recipients who make as little as $16,000 a year to pay a $35 copayment every time they visit a doctor. And what will be the impact of that? It's not rocket science. I think we can all figure it out. If people don't have access to health care, if they lose their health insurance, if they can't go to a doctor when they need to, if people have to pay a deductible they can't afford to pay, ordinary people, low-income people, working-class people will suffer, and tens of thousands will die. The Yale University School of Public Health and the University of Pennsylvania estimated that if this reconciliation bill is enacted, over 50,000 Americans will die unnecessarily each and every year. 50,000 Americans. That's what we're talking about here. Not only would millions of Americans lose their health insurance, and tens of thousands of our constituents needlessly die. If this legislation is enacted, rural hospitals all over this country that are already struggling would be forced to shut down, lay off workers, or substantially reduce the vital healthcare services they provide. In other words, this bill, on top of everything else, would be a disaster for rural America, which, as everybody knows, is struggling right now. Further, when Trump and the Republicans in Congress make massive cuts to Medicaid, they're also making massive cuts to community health centers, which provide primary health care to 32 million low-income and working-class Americans. Community health centers rely on Medicaid for 43% of their revenue. So when you cut hundreds of billions of dollars in Medicaid, you're significantly cutting back on the access that millions of low-income and working Americans will have to the primary care they need. And at a time when some 22% of our seniors are trying to survive on less than $15,000 a year, this legislation will make it much harder for seniors and people with disabilities to receive the care they desperately need in nursing homes. Medicaid, in fact, provides over 60% of the revenue nursing homes rely on. So let us be clear. This legislation is the most significant attack on the healthcare needs of the American people. And it would substantially increase the uninsured rate in every state in our country, every state. If this legislation was signed into law, the uninsured rate in my own state of Vermont would go up from 3.3 to 6%. In Louisiana, 6.7 to 12.4%. State of Washington, 6.2 to 11%. In Florida, hear this, the uninsured rate would go up from 10.4 to over 18%. And on it goes in every state in this country. But this bill not only devastates our healthcare system, that's not good enough for these guys. Now they want to go after nutrition programs for hungry kids and seniors. This bill would cut $290 billion from nutrition programs. It would slash education funding by $350 billion. So this bill is in essence exactly what Trumpism is about. And what that says is that we are rich and powerful, we got it all, and we're going to go after the most vulnerable people in our society in order to become even richer. We're going to throw poor people, low-income people off of healthcare, off of nutrition, make it harder for these kids to get an education so we can give massive tax breaks to billionaires who, in fact, have never, ever had it so good. So, friends, this bill is a total disaster. Let us do everything that we can to defeat it. Please give your member of Congress a call. Let them know how you feel about it. Thank you very much.